welcome back. Today is going to be my rendition of the cheap art supply challenge. It's much more of an affordable art supply challenge. So what I focus on when I'm looking for supplies is that they have to be light fast and they have to be archival. Since I'm selling my artwork, I need it to be that if I sell something, I know it's going to last. It's not going to fade in the sun, which absolutely can happen. Even with artist quality and professional quality supplies, some of those are not light fast. So that is what I'm always looking for every time I get into a new supply. And that's the biggest drawback with using really cheap art supplies, is that you can create great artwork with it, but when it comes to actually displaying it or selling it, they can fade very easily and very quickly. So I wanted to do this challenge in the mindset of looking for supplies that will serve my purpose as a professional artist, things that will last. And I do have a link to everything that I use down in the description. If you tally it up, it might end up a little bit differently than my total, since I tried to find things on sale and with coupons. Although a lot of things are cheaper online than they are in the art stores that I have available to me, unfortunately. But I do have a list of everything down below. What I did was I went to the open stock section for my watercolor paper, and it's a type of Canson, but I don't remember exactly. But again, I'll have it down in the description. And I just cut it down. Since this one didn't have a deckled edge, I just cut it with a razor instead of tearing it like I usually do. And I ended up with 4 8.5 by 11 size sheets, and I think it was maybe 6 of that smaller square type size. So that was a pretty good amount of paper that I got for it. It was originally $3.20, I believe, and I used a coupon on that. So that was really very affordable for what it was. And the line work that I'm doing today is with a Prismacolor black colored pencil. And this one, I'm really glad that I tried something new. It was fun to try something new, but I don't think I will ever do it again, at least in this way. So the biggest problem is that since I'm using it on watercolor paper, and this watercolor paper isn't actually that textured, it was relatively smooth compared to what I normally use, but it still did have texture, which meant that this very soft pencil got worn down very quickly. So I was sharpening it a lot. So it was very, very tedious. It was really fun doing her eyes and her eyebrows and the facial features with this pencil, but once it got to her hair, it just took so long. And I burned through like about 2/3 of this pencil. No, maybe half of the pencil, which means that this is not very economical, at least for the way that I use it. I know that a lot of people love using these for line art, but a lot of them, I believe, use them on much smoother surfaces, like on Bristol board. I know that Mark Crilly uses this for a lot of his line work, and I will absolutely try it again on something smoother. But with watercolor paper, I don't think I want to delve into that again. But what I did love about it is I loved when I got to the inking, the way that the ink filled in the little cracks between the line work itself. I think that was a really interesting effect, and mostly it was just fun to see a very different side with the line work, since I always use microns, almost always. It's very filled in and it's a solid black line. So being able to watch the line art transform as I was adding the ink washes was actually really enjoyable. And I did make sure while I was doing the line work that I had a paper to rest my hand on. The paper I was using was actually sticker backing, so one side was really slick, which worked great for this, and I just had the slick side down on the paper. And even when I'm not using a tool that's really smudgy for line work, I always make sure that I have a paper to rest my hand on, because the paper can absorb the hand oils on your skin, and it almost never affects it, but I have experienced it in the past where it'll make the paint go down really blotchy, and I couldn't figure out what it was because I was using the same paper. There was no other reasons. And then I realized that I didn't use a guard for my hand and I had really pressed it on there. So I do make sure that I use a paper to keep another paper to keep my watercolor paper, that is, as clean and pristine as possible. And I think what this challenge really cemented for me is the opinion that good quality paper really, really does matter. I've read this before, and the more that I work with cheaper quality paper, the more I believe it. So you can take cheaper quality paints and use it on really great paper and get good results and be able to control it. But if you take really bad paper, even with the best paints, those paints are going to look cheap and you're going to struggle with it. And by look cheap, I mean they're going to have the problems and the pitfalls that cheaper paint is going to have and can have. And this painting, I'm really happy with the results, but I had to fight a lot more to get to that point than I would have if I had used nicer paper, the paper that I usually prefer. And you know, when it comes down to it, that's just not worth it to me personally. Of course, it all comes down to your budget, how much you can afford, and what a priority it is for you. But for me, I want to be able to enjoy the pieces a little bit more, and I just really had to fight to get nice flat washes in this one. It was almost impossible. It was to the point that it was really, really blotchy because some were drying faster than others, and it wasn't because of the way that I was spreading the paint. It was simply because the paper was drying differently. So I think that it's just, if you've gotten to a point where you feel like your skill level has reached the maximum it can with the supplies you have, try getting better paper. I can absolutely say that working on this paper has made me really appreciate the paper that I normally use. And the paper that I normally use is Arches, and I'll have a link down in the description to that paper also, the one that I usually use that I actually really love because I can actually get flat washes. But overall, I had a lot of fun working with very limited supplies and also trying to find them and calculate how much I was actually spending on each supply. And honestly, art supplies are surprisingly expensive. When I looked at this little pile, I was like, wow, that costs that much, really? But I'm going to get the quality that I want, and since I got an ink wash and I have a black pencil, these are things that I'm able to create lots of different types of images. I'm not locked into one kind, and I am absolutely interested in trying out new supplies and new methods. I'm really interested in exploring things and having fun with that. So if you guys have any suggestions of mediums that you'd like me to try out or anything technique-wise that you'd like me to see, I'd love to hear it down in the description. I think that this did make me want to try a little bit more colored pencil, or incorporating colored pencil into my watercolor pieces that I normally do as like accents, or to give it a little bit of a blush, especially water soluble ones. I think that I would like to get another set of water soluble pencils like I used to make her cheeks a little bit blushy. I actually got one years and years ago, a set of water soluble pencils. In fact, I think it was like the first set of like real art supplies. That's what I remember, is it was my birthday and I went in and I got to pick out what I wanted, and I got this set of water soluble pencils and this little pack of loose leaf watercolor paper, and it was super cheap, but I didn't know that at the time. And anyways, I'm just getting all nostalgic now thinking about watercolor soluble watercolor pencils, so I might actually have to get myself a set and mix that up. But yeah, if you guys have suggestions of what you'd like to see me use, I would love to hear it. I do have a set of really cheap gouache that I got that I'd like to try out and play with a little bit more. So gouache is on the list. I think more colored pencils might be as well, since I have a set. And yeah, just let me know what you'd like to see. I would like to mix things up and add a little bit more variety to this channel. And to the final embellishing step, I of course had to make sure that I got something to embellish this piece with, like I usually like to do. And I found this glittery paint, which is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. I want to carry it around in my pocket and just have it with me all the time. It's just really pretty. I loved it. And the second I saw it, I fell in love. But yeah, I think I went a little bit overboard with putting the glitter on the background. I put one lighter layer over all of it first, where I like tapered it out towards the top so that it faded with the glitter as it went up. And then I was like, no, that's not enough glitter. So I added an extra thick coat on top, and then I realized that it was just a little bit too much. But luckily the glitter, unless the light is shining on it in the right angle, it's not shining, so it's not overpowering for most lighting situations. So I think it turned out okay, but I loved working with this paint. I think it looks really just pretty. It's really pretty. There's lots of colors in the glitter, which I liked, and they're all really pastel. And that is it for today's video. I really enjoyed paring it down and seeing what I can create with less, and it did reaffirm the things that I think are an absolute priority, and that's the paper. But it also showed me things like the ink wash that I could do a much simpler and with less supplies and really still enjoy it a lot. And it's nice to get back into that and to remember that I don't need a lot of supplies or super expensive supplies to enjoy the process. But as usual, I have the original available at my shop, and I'll have a link in the description as well as in the end card. And I do also have prints from the video from earlier this week as well. I didn't have them up when I launched the video, but they are now. So again, I have all that stuff at my shop, and I post every Wednesdays and Saturdays. So I'll see you guys at my next one.